A very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you again for joining the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards Australia virtual roundtable, an important part of our pre-event calendar in the region's industry-leading Asia Property Awards series. Now, today's virtual roundtable has been specially created by the team at PropertyGuru, not only to explain the awards process, but also to provide some insights into the current and future status of Australia's real estate market, both from a domestic and an international investment perspective. My name is Jules Kay. I'm Managing Director of the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards, and I'll be moderating today's session. Have the next slide, please. So before I kick off, let's first thank our partners for their support this year. We have our official awards supervisor, HLB, the official magazine, PropertyGuru Property Report, our official cable TV partner, the History Channel, official charity partner, Right to Play, and our official ESG partner, Bandek Foundation. A few ground rules for our participants before we hear from our speakers today. If you have any questions during the presentations in the first part of this webinar, please feel free to type them in the question and answer chat box on your screen. Towards the end of the session, there will be a Q&A session when we will do our best to address and answer your questions in full. So let's move on to our speakers. As I said, my name is Jules Kay, Managing Director of the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards and Events, and I'm joined today by some very expert speakers. First of all, we have Mr. Louis Violanti, Regional Manager, Western Australia for Inhabit Group, and the Chairperson of the judging panel for the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards Australia. Welcome, Louis.
Thank you.
Also with us is Josh Chai, Partner and Head of Tax, HLB Man Judd, HLB Australia, HLB being the official supervisor for the awards this year. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks very much, Jules.
Also welcome to Leonie Claret, CEO and founder of the Property Expert International, and one of our judges on the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards panel. Welcome, Leonie.
Thank you very much.
And last but by no means least, Mr. Ivan Lam, Head of International Business, Charter Keck Kramer, and one of our judges also on the awards panel for Australia this year. Thank you for joining us, Ivan.
Thank you.
So thanks all of you for joining us today and for sharing your varied and in-depth knowledge and insights on the Australian market. So let's get right into it. I will begin the proceedings with a little overview of the Asia Property Awards. I'd like to share a bit of key information about the awards and why they're considered such a prestigious accolade across the Asia Pacific real estate markets. Next slide, please. And the next. So let's start with a brief summary of the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards. Over the last 16 years, the Asia Property Awards have grown and diversified to cover multiple markets in the Asia Pacific region. And our awards now help to set a quality benchmark for regional real estate, development, and design. We run a series of national awards programs, which has already begun this year, and they will run till the end of the year, culminating in our PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards Grand Final in December, which brings together top developers and projects from across Asia to celebrate the best of the best in regional real estate. The judging process for our awards is independent, consistent, fair, and transparent. And additional credibility is added with our official supervisor from our partners, global accounting and advisory firm, HLB. So simply put, the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards are considered the gold standard for real estate in Asia. Next slide, please. So a quick look back at 2020. The challenges of the pandemic first started there, but in terms of coverage and participation, the Asia Property Awards continued to lead the way as the region's most prominent, credible and prestigious real estate awards series. To ensure the safety of all our participants, we switched to a virtual Gala platform last year in many of the countries where we run the awards, and this actually proved very successful as it extended the reach of the Asia Property Awards online, and we were able to welcome around 500,000 viewers from China to Singapore, from Vietnam to Australia. This year, we will once again be live streaming all the awards galas online to ensure that investors, agents and home buyers have a clear view of the best properties and opportunities on offer around the Asia Pacific and of course, Australia. Next slide, please. So for property developers, entering the biggest, most respected industry event in the region is quite a straightforward process. Nominations are possible in a wide variety of categories, including developer categories, development categories, and design categories. Entries are submitted online, along with supporting information, images and video, and our independent judges, many of whom are with us today, review the submissions, discuss the merits of each project, and also follow the criteria that we've developed through a 16-year history of the awards in this region. To support their deliberations, they conduct physical or virtual site inspections, as well as reviewing all the submitted materials and media that comes with it. After that, the official supervisor, HLB, verifies the final shortlist, which is then announced to the industry and the public online and in the press. So the winners and highly commended companies and projects from Australia will then be announced right before our PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards Grand Final, and all the key category winners will also go on to compete for Asia Regional Honours. In 2019, the award for the best high-rise architectural design in Asia went to Conservatory Melbourne by UEM Sunrise. And last year, another outstanding Australian project, Paragon of Pyrmont by Third Eye Group, was awarded the coveted Best Housing Development Asia title. So Australia has a strong history of success in these awards. We look forward to seeing more this year. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, in December, all the country awards lead to our regional grand final. And it's at that time that we also hold the PropertyGuru Asia Real Estate Summit. This is when thought leaders from around the world, including tech innovators, groundbreaking designers, seasoned investors, and of course developers, share their expertise on the future of the real estate industry, as well as the design and investment prospects for the Asia Pacific region and beyond. Next slide, please. You can see the dates here for the Asia Real Estate Summit and the Property Awards Grand Final. They will both be hosted virtually again this year, with live stream broadcast and a virtual conference attracting everyone from senior marketing executives to CEOs, architects, urban planners, and people from all over the industry, all over the region. People who share a passion for driving excellence in regional real estate development. So we're proud to feature Australian developers and properties in the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards 2021, and we look forward to recognizing the country's best projects and designs this year. That's my little overview. We will now move on to the main event, which is our webinar discussion led by Mr. Louis Violanti. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Jules, and for that great overview of the whole awards. I'd like to focus just on the Australian side of things at the moment, and a lot of things I will say probably have been covered by Jules, but it's actually important to understand the Australian influence for this. Being honoured to be one of the first judges on the panel and the chairman of the judges at the moment, so important to sort of go through some of the housekeeping and some of the information that's required. So briefly, it's an overview of the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards Australia. Now, being part of the PropertyGuru Asia Awards is invaluable in showcasing new developments in Australia, and it also opens up an exposure to the Asia Pacific region. Great projects in our cities give better understanding of our regional design, its designers, its builders, and construction practices within the Australian property market. And this interaction between our property markets helps Australia to be active and informed with the global property trends and helps developers with our Australian property sector. Also, that being an active informed builds harmonious and financial successful projects, both locally and globally. The PropertyGuru Property Awards Australia honours our outstanding developers together with the best in Asia, celebrating the best of the best in the Asia Pacific real estate sector. The awards is the most respected and most sought after real estate industry honours. And these honours were established, as Jules said, in 2005, have grown to 15 countries now, and to cover 2/3 of the world's population. And as mentioned earlier, that we had 500,000 virtual views last year's awards and the summit. So 2021 awards program will be the biggest and the most prestigious industry accolade recognising Australia's finest real estate projects. So that's basically just a homage to where we are and how we sort of like work with our region. The roles of the independent judging panel are to maintain credibility and respect within the system. So I'm lucky enough to actually be one of a group of judges, and these judges are Benson Zhao, Leo de Cleric, who will speak later, Richard Newlin Ward, Jessica Liu, Ivan Lamb, who will speak also today, and myself. Now, these judges consist of some of Australia's most respected property and architectural professionals, all with an intimate knowledge of the Australian property market and with very strong connections to our neighbouring countries. All entries are reviewed in detail and judging is conducted within a supervised environment, ensuring that the Asia Property Awards is the gold standard in real estate. And you can see that list, you can see that images there, all these lovely faces of the judging panel, except mine. So I've lost a bit of weight since then. The awards are unparalleled reputation of being credible, fair, and transparent. And we respect the security and the actual probity of it all. The awards consist of numerous categories, but the categories are broken up into 3 sections, as Jules mentioned earlier. The Developer Awards, the Development Awards, and Design Awards. These actually cover cities as well within Australia, and then there's national awards. And within the end of that, there is the best of the best developments being awarded for being exemplar products. Some of the highlights of last year's awards were the level of excellence in our apartment design. This is a category highly regarded within the Australian market and much discussed during the final international judging. We pride ourselves in quality of residential, high-rise residential, and those projects mentioned earlier did win 2 of the international awards in the last couple of years. Other highlights will be definitely hotel, retail, and sustainable design developments. So to move forward, I mean, the timeline for entries is very important because, as we all know, time is passing us by and the year is already halfway through. So the awards did open up on January 2021, and entries will close on the 17th of September. So we recommend that you get all your exciting projects in soon. Between the 27th of September and the 15th of October will be the site inspections, and they'll be virtual or through whatever webinars we can do to visualize those projects. The final judging will take place on the 19th of November. And just a caveat to all those, these dates are all subject to current COVID-19 government regulations and policies throughout Australia. So just to finish off my short section about Australia and the overview of it, it's important to know with Australia's growing economy, we're one of the strongest property markets in the area. And this is creating an enticing environment for investment, including foreign investment. Our buildings are technically advanced, and it's things that we build now were impossible years ago. So they're becoming engineering marvels now. I mean, we're just racing up the sort of heights of buildings, and facade technology, which I get involved in, is just cutting edge at the moment. So being part of the Property Asia Awards program is available for showcasing these new developments to the Australian market and to the community. Once again, it creates a platform for showcasing Australia's wonderful new developments through our entire Asia Pacific region. And as Jules mentioned, the awards are now in their 16th year, and the program is now cultivated into a highly successful, trusted platform for showcasing the achievements of developments across this region. Moving ahead, regional priorities such as climate action will now take center stage with environmental and sustainable designs and construction methodologies. So I look forward to the new phases of developments coming through. So that's my quick overview, and we'll just pass on back to the moderator.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you for that. That's a very succinct and accurate summary of the way the awards operate. So thank you, Louis Violante. He's been the leader of our judging team now ever since the first edition of the awards, and we really appreciate your support. Thank you so much for that. So moving on to our next speaker, Mr. Josh Chai, who is the partner and head of tax at HLB Manjud, HLB Australia. HLB are actually our new official supervisor this year for the Asia Property Awards series across all of our markets. And Josh is representing them for the Australia section of the awards. So thank you, Josh, who's going to let us know a little bit more about HLB and their role as official supervisor. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Jules. And having just heard the overview again from you, Jules, and Louis, on the fact that this is the gold standard and it's moving into Australia, I just feel very privileged and grateful for the opportunity for HLB to the network to be part of the judging process this year. And in particular, I want to thank Paul Ashburn and Andrew Jokimos from our HLB Thailand office for bringing us together. It's great to work with our colleagues in this Asia Pacific region, because fundamentally Australia is part of Asia Pacific, and we clearly have a lot of clients from overseas, including China, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand, to name a few that when we speak to have really been impressed that the awards are now coming into Australia, that they have the opportunity to showcase some of their projects. And that's very exciting for us, but clearly it also puts a lot of pressure and responsibility for us, which we won't take for granted, to make sure that there's the full integrity and checks and balances for the judging. So I'm happy to talk to an overview of, I guess, HLB's role in the judging process. Next slide, please. Yep, and the next slide after that. So HLB's role as a brand that is connected globally in over 150 markets, our role as accountants and advisors is always to make sure that we do things professionally and with integrity. And in this case, with the judging for the Asia Property Awards in Australia, our role is really to make sure that there is a really stringent process and guidelines that are followed through. We certainly have naturally a very distinguished panel of judges, which Louis has talked to. We naturally will all have connections into the Australian market with developers. And so part of my job is just to make sure that we're fully transparent on, when we review the applications that come in, that we have a published set of criteria that we work through, that we declare any conflicts of interest and we sign these appropriately, and that we are really just looking at the projects on its own merit and transparently discussing any previous relationships with those projects. There is obviously quite a thorough process in terms of the number of times that we will meet and with site visits, which HLB and myself will always be part of the review of that process, just purely as the supervisor, to make sure that the correct process is followed. And we take great pride in knowing that at the end of the process, we will be supporting announcers, the winners, and the highly commended results as well. Next slide, please. So there's clearly a lot of categories, which I think is terrific because it really gives an opportunity for established and emerging developers across different types of projects to really showcase their project in the different categories, which I won't go through all of them. Suffice to say, there are a lot of categories, which you can see, which will be keeping the judges and HLB and myself very busy. But that is probably part of the fun. That's part of the reward that we'll have to really be able to identify these projects and really showcase them to show really responsible development, show really that developers can really cross boundaries in the Asia Pacific region and really do success in different markets. So as you can see, there's a lot of different categories there. So we would expect that there should be an opportunity for different developers to identify projects that fit a particular category, and also obviously the format of which we will be reviewing their applications across those different aspects of design. Next slide, please. And I'll just round off by saying, because I think this has been covered, there is a process that we will go through. We have had our first judges meeting to connect as the judges and HLB as supervisor for the awards this year in Australia. So we clearly now have the opportunity to understand who's going to be supporting and review the applications. And from here, clearly now, as Louis said, we're really looking forward to all the applications coming in so that then we can go forward with reviewing all the applications in our subsequent follow-up meetings, making sure that we follow through again on the processes and checklists and the judging criteria, including both the initial and then site inspections and follow through on the score sheets, followed by, if you like, the final judges meeting. So there is a pretty robust, detailed process we need to go through for all the different categories. But more importantly, with HLB myself, I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to really be an opportunity for the first time in Australia to help showcase these projects. And I'm hoping HLB can be part of this process for many years to come. So I think I'll sort of leave it there for now, Jules, but thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Josh. It's a pleasure to have you on board as our Australian HLB rep and official supervisor. And we look forward to working with you as well. It's great to be moving into a new area with you guys. So it's excellent. Okay, now let's move on to our next speaker, which is Leonie Clarick, also one of our judges. Leonie is CEO and founder of the Property Expert International. She's been a judge since last year on our panel, and she'll be giving us a few insights into the real estate market now for New South Wales. So Leonie, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Property Guru and Asia Pacific. Thank you for allowing me it. Next slide. Can you hear me properly?
Bit of an echo.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to say that maybe I'll take it off. Is that working better?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thanks, Liam.
I've been in real estate for about over 40 years, and I've seen a lot of boom and bust markets in Australia. You know, we've had interest rates really high at some point, and we'll
You need to press mute on one of your devices. One of your devices needs to be muted. You've got two on.
Oh, I didn't think I had anything on the other one. I'll just turn that off. Sorry about that.
Okay.
You know, I think COVID is now, you know, all around the world, and it's a very different market. We all have to be a bit more cautious. However, the property market in Sydney has always been a great solid way to invest funds, and everyone in Australia still wants to own their own home. Is that working?
Yeah.
Because I haven't got any more. Okay.
Yeah, good.
Yes. Sorry, it's a bit tricky. Anyway, the outlook for New South Wales commercial and real estate in residential and commercial is still very strong. We're still getting a lot of great results. The urban developer Sydney market insight for May revealed that Sydney residential market has shown no signs of slowing down. So from January to April 2021, Sydney dwelling median house prices continue to be the highest among the capital cities. 49.8% higher than the national average. New South Wales residential and commercial real estate is still one of the strongest in Sydney. Big regional towns have increased in value drastically since COVID. You've got Mudgee, Orange, the Central Coast. People are actually leaving Sydney for more of a lifestyle choice and working from home. So they are leaving Sydney and buying for lifestyle near the water, and so that they can work from home. So the property prices are going up out of areas of Sydney. The eastern seaboard of Australia, example Queensland and Victoria, have also done extremely well. We have got quite a lot of strong appeal. You know, Sydney is an international city, and so for overseas investors, it's always a safe haven for investors, immigrants, and a lifestyle choice. Heritage and new developments are now trying to go hand in hand, where councils are encouraging developers to maintain the heritage component to new designs. I feel that Sydney is well and truly leading the pack, and it is still the fastest growing market in terms of the pace of value growth. I'm not really sure how to get it better, to be honest.
You're coming through. It's fine.
Okay, so just my opinion of the Sydney housing market forecast. A report from the ANZ Bank predicts the Australian house prices will rise to a strong 19% through 2021 before slowing to a 6% in 2022, with most segments establishing strong price appreciation other than the inner city and the high-rise markets. The NAB Bank has predicted that Sydney house prices will rise over 2021, while the Commonwealth Bank is predicting a rise of 16%. Westpac Bank said low interest rates of about 0.10% could see real estate values in Sydney rise by 10%. So obviously all the banks are pretty keen and agree that the property market still is strong. And the last point that I was going to make about building approvals. So New South Wales is leading the way for building approvals, hitting heights since 1980. So the number of homes approved in April increased 30.1%, and the apartments were up 12.1%, according to the Australia Bureau of Statistics. The national private sector homes reaches a record high, up to 4.6% in April, as the homeowners scheme comes to an end. Despite the high levels of approvals, the national results were down 8.6% of the month, down only by 18.9% in March. While New South Wales leads the way for building approvals in March, house prices for April have a second biggest upswing in 32 years. So, by looking at all the statistics, we feel that it's still going to be strong for the next year. Thank you. Thank you. And sorry about all the audio. I'm not sure why.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Leonie. It's some good insights there. And we did have the slide as well to back you up. So everybody, I think, got the key information there. Thanks very much for giving us that overview of the New South Wales market. Obviously, an important part of what's going on in Australia, and growth still very positive. Some positive news there for investors. So thanks again for joining us. And now we'll move on to Ivan, Mr. Ivan Lam, Head of International Business, Charter Keck Kramer, who is also one of our judges on the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards panel. Ivan will be discussing cross-border investment in Australia and also sharing some insights into the Victoria, Melbourne markets. So I'll pass it over to you now, Ivan, if that's okay.
Thanks, Jules, and good afternoon, everyone. And can we move on to the next slide, please? Let's start. Let's have a look at which Australian industries attract foreign direct investment, and which is quite interesting. We can see how important our real estate industry is, which is sitting at number 2 at $120 billion in 2020. The number 1 industry, as we would expect, is the mining industry. So we are in second place, which is particularly important for the economy. Next slide, please. And next slide, we will show the top 5 countries investing into the Australian real estate market in 2019 and 2020. The latest annual report from the Foreign Investment Review Board, the FIRB, showed a surge in foreign buyers' investment across 2019 and 2020 financial year, with over $55 billion committed in residential and commercial real estates. The United States remains the largest source country for approved proposed real estate investment at $13.1 billion. And Singapore is the second at $9.5 billion, then China at $7.1 billion. Following China is Germany at $3.68 billion, then Canada and Hong Kong, France at $2.1 billion each. So it is, you can see how it is actually very important for Australian to maintain a very good ties with the Asian counterparts, as you can see the second and the third most investing countries are Singapore and China. Now we go to the next slide. We can particularly see New South Wales has the highest level of proposal for foreign real estate investment at $12.7 billion, Victoria at $7.48 billion, then Queensland and at $4.26 billion. In the past 12 to 18 months, our Singapore office and our capital arm have been consistently being asked by our Asian and Singapore clients about opportunities to acquire data centers, logistics, industrial type of assets. The reason for it is the growth of e-commerce and demand of bandwidth. And we see in 2020 has shown a 68% lift on online trade. It is a resilient market that can actually that's pretty much the one of the very few that can actually grow during a global pandemic and lockdowns. The other sector of interest, and there has been a lot of discussion lately, build to rent, multi-living, as there is general view that most people will not move out of their house or apartment or give it up easily as it is a roof overhead. It has shown that its resilience during the pandemic compared to retail and office space. With growing residential prices, rental units will continue to appeal to renters due to proximity to amenities and transport, which is again a lifestyle choice. It is also a more affordable to rent than buying close to the city. With residential prices getting beyond reach of young people, their renting journey is extending. So generally, popular places like New York, Tokyo, Shanghai, where prices are traditionally very expensive for city living, and hence both Sydney and in particular in Melbourne has a very big potential for to rent and multi-living. So if we go to next slide, it will be a perfect segue to actually talk about the Melbourne apartment market. The next slide probably will be one of my favorite. It tells us the investment logic and why apartment market in Melbourne is here to stay, as the structural shift of living preferences in the next 10 to 20 years will change. This graph shows a percentage of total metro dwelling stock in forms of apartment versus the city's population across cities in the Western countries. We can see the two biggest cities in Australia, Sydney and Melbourne, with similar proportion population of around 5 million. The dwelling stock in the form of apartments are only sitting at 13% and 6% respectively. So it immediately shows you how immature the Melbourne apartment market is and the potential. Our government body, Plan Victoria, is forecasting by 2050, population in Melbourne will reach 8 million and expecting the total dwelling stock in the form of apartment should reach 20%. It comes from the fundamental change in living preferences and affordability. What it means is it will require approximately 16,000 apartments to be built each year to hit that 20% mark by 2050. So we go to next slide. We can all see what a devastating effect COVID has with the population growth. About 60% of population growth has been in Victoria has been from overseas, and overseas student makes up 30% of the net overseas migration to Victoria State and Melbourne. We do anticipate though, international border reopens, if it reopens by mid-2022, and population growth will rebound and drives demand for additional and diverse form of dwellings. But currently, we must say the border closure, tremendous loss of overseas students is reflecting on higher vacancies and lower rental rates on the apartment market right now. We go to the next slide. I've put in a black line, indicates interstate migration, and you can see in the past 10 years, Victoria has been a state of choice by many Australians ourselves. Unfortunately, as we can see, COVID lockdown has been driving people out of Victoria. The benefits of remote working arrangement, working from homes, have seen people making lifestyle choices of moving to regional as well as interstate like Queensland. However, in the future, as the graph also is indicating, that a strong fundamental of the state should actually drive interstate migration back into Victoria, which will in turn drive additional dwelling demands. We go on to the next one. This is interesting. How people live depends on the life stage and age group. So the Gen Z are probably the uni students and young people who've actually hit hardest by the pandemic ones, who moved into other states and find work. They are also the typical renters and with low purchasing power. And well, if I'm an apartment developer and developing products for those age groups, I'll be probably worrying for a couple of years, as you can see. However, we do expect they will bounce back as the COVID situation improves and overseas students starting to return. The opportunity lies with the millennials and the baby boomers. They have more stable income and secure jobs, and they are in a different phase in life. Many of them are priced out of the market. Affordability becomes a concern, and having right type of apartment products will certainly appeal to those age groups. Next slide, please. The next slide is interesting to actually note the increase in percentage of renters in the market, and by the age group, it has certainly shown renting is being accepted as form of living, as well as people are making life decisions later in their life. Especially the 30 to 39-year-olds are taking longer to save for the deposit and starting families later, which triggers the increase in renters percentage. If we go to the next slide, please. I'll briefly mention apartments were still taken up by younger residents in the past. However, the older residents to follow, but we actually need a correct product offerings. Working from home sees projects, not just apartment, but also townhouses and houses that are selling or renting well are the ones with a study or a functional area that can be used for works. So we can see if the rental market is growing, we need to look at products that will meet their needs. It shows pretty good narratives of why build to rent is likely to succeed because of the change of living preference by age group and affordability. We can move to the next slide, please. Okay. Our firm, Chartered Kramer, we have a national apartment database, and we track all apartment projects nationally, which we use our data to help our clients make informed decisions. What we are showing here is the number of project releases on a yearly basis for the last 20 years across metropolitan Melbourne. Releases refers to developers launching the project in the form of marketing, pre-selling, and up to the level that satisfied financiers' funding requirement for constructions. We can see 2014 and 15 peak the cycle. Everyone in the industry probably remember across Australia how fast apartments were selling. There were a lot of support in the market. Overseas buyers, migrant students, easy access to finance, etc. actually has supported the market greatly. However, cooling measures, tightening credit criteria, and the pandemic in 2019 and 2020 were the years with a lot of uncertainties, and that's why we can see the developers were reluctant to launch their projects. And if we go to the next slide, what the releases figures translate to is the completion, and it looks a bit of a worry actually. 2016 and 2020 has a peak, as we can see in the graph. As expected, as projects were sold in 2014 and 16, got built over the 18 months to 24 months period. In particular, big projects like Australia 108 in South Bank, the balance stock were delivered in 2020. That's why we've got a peak there. But when we project forward from our database, from the releases figures, we can actually see a dramatic drop in completion. What this is suggesting, factoring in population growth, population returning from the states to the state, we are foreseeing a lack of supply of apartments in the next couple of years. Next slide, please. The next slide should show a quick comparison of the rental market, showing the importance of understanding the target market. A typical investor type products, many of those in the city and city fringe has taken the hardest hit. We can actually see the next slide. The one before. Yeah, so it the previous slide should show you a comparison between the different suburban markets, and show the city and city fringe has taken the hardest hit with vacancies and of course the rental rates, whereas the suburbs shows a lot of resilience pre and post COVID. Many of the apartments projects launched in 2020 last year were between 10 to 50 apartments, so smaller size apartments instead of big towers, launched in the areas like in the suburbs like Kew and the Melbourne East suburbs. They don't even have one bedroom as an option. There were 2 beds, 2 baths, 3 to 4 bedrooms targeting the owner occupiers and downsizers, and many of them were quite selling very well during the lockdowns. So if we go to the next slide, to conclude, over the last 10 years, we saw many towers of investor type products targeting students and young people with little amenities and storage. And in the next 10 years, we're expecting the change of lifestyle and the way we live post-COVID. The products will be more catered to first-home buyers, downsizers who enter the apartment market. We shall also see more owners-occupier grade apartments, smaller scale, with the focus of amenities and provide ample storage space to emerge in the inner and middle suburbs. So that's pretty much it. And lastly, thank you, Jules and PropertyGuru team in bringing Asia Property Awards to Australia. I think it is inevitable that the ties between Australia and the rest of Asia will continue to strengthen. And this is a great platform for the Australian developers to showcase their great projects to investors and fellow developers across Asia. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you so much. Some really good, deep insights there on the Melbourne and Victoria markets and what's going on with regard to properties for sale and obviously build to rent, and what's likely to be the future trends there. So really appreciate your expert input on that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so to continue, we still have a bit of time for a Q&A. A few questions have popped up in the chat. We've also actually received a few questions over email. Thank you for bearing with us with the connection today. I think the problem is everybody on this call is in lockdown. So we're all using home internet connections, which therefore means we sometimes have a bit of a lag with the slides. But we can go into audio now for our Q&A session. Thanks again, obviously, to all the speakers. Well, now I think I'll sort of go through one by one, choose a question for each of you, and then maybe open a couple to the whole panel so that we can have a bit of a discussion there as well. So let's go back to our chairperson, Louis Violante, who was the first speaker. Louis, just from a domestic perspective, I guess I wanted to see what you were thinking. I mean, there's been a lot of news about the Australia domestic real estate market already bouncing back, you know, despite continued lockdowns, you know, the ongoing closure of the borders, the market's been doing very well. Would you say that, you know, the Australian market's still performing strongly despite all these challenges?
If I just tackle the local property market, the Western Australian market was a little bit more depressed than the east coast of Australia. That has bounced back remarkably in the last couple of years. I think a lot of that is caused by COVID because people are coming back. It's a bit of the internal migration. People have left the large cities like Sydney and Melbourne, as what Ivan was mentioning, and now coming back to Perth, like I did probably 7 years ago, because they're finding that the prices are quite expensive on the East Coast, and they come back, get a better property for the same amount of money. So we're seeing a boom in Perth, and we're seeing residential upturn, and Ivan probably could have gone through the Perth market as well. I think all the information I'm hearing about, there's a couple of things. The student market, because of the international travel restrictions we have, has really hit cities like Melbourne and Sydney very harshly, as Ivan mentioned. But that hasn't stopped projects in Perth being built either, because I know there's 3 student accommodation buildings have been built, and they're still under construction now. So they are foreseeing the end of COVID coming through. And I think also we're seeing maybe Australia might have a better path in the future because of the way our cities are in that way post-COVID. So from the markets that I'm hearing, developers I'm talking to, we are pushing, and we're pushing forward ahead. So that's my answer to that question.
Great, thank you. You know, it sounds very positive. I mean, this is similarly with Leone, right? I think we could, you know, the statistics that you showed us on New South Wales and Sydney, very encouraging, very positive, despite the fact that you guys, you know, you're in lockdown as well at the moment. Do you think, you know, you also mentioned Sydney's international appeal, which is obviously well known. Do you think once, you know, once borders open, you'll be able to maintain that that position as one of the top cities in the world to live in, or do you think people will be, you know, more inclined to stay at home after COVID, or do you think cities like Sydney will still have that universal appeal for investors?
I definitely think so. I definitely think so. I mean, it's got, you know, Sydney's a beautiful place to live. It's got a lot of water. The climate's great. It's always supply and demand. So there's always plenty of people, you know, the major areas where people want to live in is still in demand. People are still wanting properties now. There's a lot of young people still wanting to buy in the lower range. There's a lot of wealth. So there's a lot of people that can afford a lot more. So we're talking about, you know, 20 million and up. So there is still a lot of money around personally. And I think Sydney's always been a bit of a safe haven away from the world, and I don't think that's going to change. So I still think Sydney, you know, is a great place to invest in.
Okay, great. Thank you. Josh, if we can bring you in there, obviously, like you mentioned earlier, I think before we started the call, that, you know, the Victorians are getting a bit fed up with lockdowns. You've had to sort of work from home quite often. You've been in and out of the office. Have you seen any sort of significant remote working shift in and around Melbourne yourself with regards to the way people behave? You know, is there less people going to the office generally? Do you think that's going to have a long-term effect?
It's funny you talk about lockdown, because our Premier just announced a 5-day lockdown while we're live on this on this webinar. So no, it's not you, definitely not you. So I'm enjoying my last day in this office for 5 days at least, and we've already had 150 days of this. So definitely there's a big, I think Victorians in particular, because we've done it so much, it doesn't make us feel any better that we're going back into lockdown. But from a workforce trend point of view, I think I personally observe, a lot of this is personal view, but certainly what I'm seeing in the market as well is, yes, permanently there will be a change in the way people work between office and home. Certainly, I don't think the office is dead. Our practice in Melbourne, at least, has moved into a very much a hybrid model. So our team, for example, allocates 3 days to come in the office. I guess it also depends on the service that you're in. But for us, we're in professional services. We have clients that obviously still want to meet us. We have heavy training, project management. So it does make sense to have certainty on certain days in, so we can and really plan around those face-to-face interactions, but also giving the workforce the opportunity to choose to work from home or wherever they want to work for a couple of days, as an example. So I think we're moving more of a hybrid model. It's permanent. In fact, if you think about it logically, before COVID, there was always a talk about, well, should we be giving staff the opportunity to work more from home? And so we just moved there a lot quicker. And because a big part of that too, I think everyone can appreciate, is everyone in their business has moved into a much more online, cloud-based model where they can now work from home. They don't have to be in the office. So I think that's just good. What that really means is, like Ivan was saying, developers will be recutting, and I've seen it already, recutting their design to accommodate more for that adjustment of at home and creating the work facility. And that's showing a significant large appeal. As a general trend, to what Leonie's saying, there's a significant increase in everyone upgrading their homes. So the market's really buoyant at the moment. So yeah, I do see that it's permanent. And industry by industry, some businesses will pick to be 100% virtual, some extreme will pick to be 100% in the office, but I think the majority will be hybrid.
Right, thank you. And back to you, Ivan. I mean, you mentioned obviously the international student, and then also we heard Louis mention this, a significant factor, especially in Melbourne. Have you seen any trends with regard to replacing, to adjusting the market in the absence of international students, or is it really more about preparing for the return of the international students? Because you seem very bullish on the return of international students when things open up. But are there alternatives, for developers and renters that are taking the place of that?
Yeah. As you can see, there aren't a lot of developments that's going on right now in Melbourne, and actually we are actually seeing a lot of the developers who hasn't launched their projects are redesigning their projects to cater for the change of lifestyle and probably work from home, that sort of living. And so I would say with the existing investor type stock probably will be staying put, and probably it will eventually get absorbed by the investor as backfilled by all the international students or young people who will actually take up those type of products. But we see a lot of majority of the developers will be focusing on what appeals to the new style of living, and design products that's cater for that market. So definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. I mean, traditionally, well, for many years, sort of Australia has led the field in terms of design. I mean, there's some incredible properties, across the country with regard to their design approach. And one of the major factors, I think, that's always been a strong point for Australia is sustainability and an understanding of, the need for green development and things like that. Do you think that this is kind of for everyone? Do you think that will continue? Because obviously, in the face of COVID-19 and the challenges that it brings, it can be quite costly to develop a sustainable property. But do you think that's in the DNA of the property sector in Australia?
I think there's no choice. It has to be because of, as I explained earlier, you have the millennials, the younger people who will be looking at, going into different types of going into the apartment market. So they are actually more savvy and more focused on sustainability. The choice a lot of them, they will look at how well it has been designed, how sustainable it is, and so forth. So to your point, yes, the answer will be that's for sure. We will have no choice but to actually cater for the market, and the market will decide what we deliver.
You agree with that, Louis?
Yeah, I was just about to jump in there. Thanks, Ivan and Jules. We just had a video conference last week with our Paris office and our Hong Kong office regarding carbon capture and the levels that and the restrictions and the government authorities, what they are doing in Paris and Europe, so far ahead of Australia that we will have to follow suit. Regulation will come through, and for instance, is where facade materials or building materials are sourced. How are they sourced? Through environmental sort of plants and et cetera, And to take Ivan's point also is the fact that younger people, as well as maybe generally as well, but the younger millennials, et cetera, are pushing change more than maybe the older people are. So, and we think that there will be, it may cost more in the short term, but I think the discerning choice will be to pick environmentally sustainable buildings in the future, and that'll be a choice to pay more for it as well.
And I was going to agree with both of you, but also say there's a lot of council regulations on, like the BASIC, and they put a lot of requirements on. So unfortunately, the development might want to cut corners, but they can't as a government requirement or council requirement.
I guess that's one of the great qualities of the Australian real estate sector. It is actually part of policy, right? So it's not a choice for many developers. So yeah. We've got a question coming from one of the participants about back to the commercial market, and I think, as Josh said, like there's the possibility of a more hybrid approach to work and things like that. We've got a question saying, does that mean commercial? There might be a tremendous drop in the terms of rental rates for commercial office or for commercial spaces. Do you think that's likely? Maybe Ivan, you were talking about rental. Have you seen anything on the commercial side?
Yeah, the commercial market is going to take a little while to recover, as what Josh is saying. Our latest figures in April 21, our occupancy rates in Melbourne is at around 40%. So, and there has been a lot of changes with how we work, and so that will continue to have some pressure on the rates. That's for sure.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it has been hard in the Sydney market. We survived COVID last year. Now we've another lockdown. I'm not sure what the government's going to do with assistance, and it just makes it really hard on the commercial side.
Yeah, definitely. I guess, but with the domestic residential, that's looking a lot more buoyant at the moment because of the things we think. Do you see also? I mean, Leonie, you actually mentioned from a sort of exodus point of view, like a lot of people moving out as well into the suburbs and things outside Sydney and out into New South Wales. Is that going to be another trend that you think will continue? Is it COVID driven, or is it just a lifestyle thing that people are?
Well, to be honest, I think it's COVID to start with, because people really we always had to work in the city. A lot of people were working in the city. COVID hit and they could work from home. And then if they're working from home, a lot of people are saying, well, why work in home? Why don't we go to a lifestyle choice? So I think it started with COVID, and now people realise that they can work from home and a bit further away and have more of a lifestyle choice. I don't think it's dropped. I mean, in the key suburbs that I know, it hasn't reduced, people leaving, in droves. What it's done is, I had a client a property up at Woy Woy, for example, and what it did was, unfortunately, it pushes them out because they can't afford the houses. The locals can't afford it because the Sydney people will pay more for them. So that's where it gets a bit tricky. It's the people that live in those areas and suburbs, their pay structure is not as high as Sydney, so they can't afford to buy, and they're being pushed out of those areas. So that's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, I suppose the knock-on effect is as well. Yeah, and also, I mean, equally with people coming back, you were saying, Louis, people coming back, for example, to Perth, is that changing is that affecting the pricing? Is it driving them up?
Oh, absolutely. I have a couple of friends that came over Christmas, and they live in inner city in Melbourne. And if they just put the scenario, if we sell their house in inner city Melbourne, they can buy a place on the beach in Perth, in Cottesloe. So what you can buy for equivalent amount of money in the larger cities, once you sell to a market, say like Perth or Adelaide, or to a lesser extent Brisbane, you get much more bang for your buck. So that is a big draw to come back to these cities. And it's also perceived, I think if I was taken a bit from what Leonie said, a lot of our people who work in Melbourne and Sydney have huge commute times. So when they're on the train for an hour plus a day or an hour and a half, live in Greater Sydney or Greater Melbourne, and then the opportunity now, they don't have to work in the CBD, they can work remotely, if not for maybe 1 day or 2 days. I think people that lifestyle choice is changing. So people are saying now, well, I can move away from that option and maybe move further out and move in the city once or twice a week. So that world will evolve further, and the days of hot desking may change into like having small office spaces where people roster themselves in and out of the office different days. It definitely is something that's in flux at the moment. And like all things in the market, it evolves itself out. It does work itself out eventually.
Right.
So,
and I suppose in many ways that also, that has again a reflected opportunity internationally, because a lot of people will look at Australia as a very attractive place to move and live and invest, given that is the lifestyle that you can choose there in various cities around Australia. I mean, from your perspective, Ivan, again, on the obviously you're expert in the Asian connections here in terms of investment and things like that. Is that still the case with regard to many countries in Asia that see Australia as an aspirational place to invest and perhaps relocate?
It has been, and it's appealing to a lot of countries or people more than ever, with our the way how we handle the pandemic, and how, although we are still talking about lockdowns and things like this, we are by comparison in a much better position than majority of the countries globally. So yeah, we will continue to see a lot of people wanting to move to Australia, probably sending the kids to Australia to study instead of Europe, to the UK or the American, being a safer place to be, a very stable country politically and environmentally. When we are, especially we are part of Asia, and we only have 2 to 3 hours of sometimes, well, Perth, we don't actually have any time difference with Asia, pretty much. So it makes it very appealing to especially the Asian country people to move to Australia.
So by the same token, very important for developers to win Asia Property Awards, I would have thought, Louis.
but it's paramount. And Ivan is probably the person to speak to again, but this foreign investment is crucial to our residential real estate market, and to help developments happen. So a lot of Singapore, Malaysian and Chinese money is used to develop properties within our cities, and it fosters that next connection of and I think families sending their children to Australia to study in universities here, and once the foothold is in a country like Australia, in the cities, you can see the parks and outside lifestyle, that people stay. and then their families grow up here, and then more people come. So it just helps our population become more multicultural, more diverse, and more international. So all of those are a plus on every level there that I see. So the integration between all the countries within the Asian Property Awards is vital, just to share, to understand each other's markets and environments. So I'm very happy with it all.
Thank you, Louis. Well, judges, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've already given us a lot of it. So thank you very much again to all of you for your contributions. It's really, really fascinating to hear what's going on in Australia at the moment. We will obviously be looking forward to meeting up again with you all when we start the judging process later in the year. But first, I'll just go one by one to say thank you. So Mr. Louis Violanti, Regional Manager of Western Australia in Habit Group and the Chairperson of the judging panel. Anything you'd like to say as a parting comment?
Jules, thank you. And it's a bit of a mouthful, my surname. It's a bit hard. It's okay. No, I think the opportunity, thank you for the opportunity to speak and present. And if I can just highlight anything to people listening and viewing, we would like to and encourage as many entries as possible into the Australian Awards, because the more entries we get in, the more that can be seen by us and the greater community. So I think very important. So I encourage everybody to get out there, call up anybody to get in.
Absolutely. Josh Kai, as our newly appointed official supervisor, thank you again. Anything you'd like to say?
Just thanks very much for the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards to come to Australia. So I think it's a national extension, and yeah, I agree. Just please, everyone, put your applications in. The more work for us, but the better for the whole program.
Thanks, and thanks for your support again, Josh, this year. Thanks. And Leonie, thank you for joining us for our second year. Anything you'd like to say?
Yes, thank you. Part of it, and I encourage anybody to put their awards in. You know, it's a fantastic flag waver for their own property, whether it's a single dwelling, whether it's a development, a multi-story. You can easily, promote that very well, and you can be a finalist or a winner, and it'll help you with your development, and it just takes you up another level, I think, in the community. So it's definitely worth putting it in.
Thanks, Leonie. And Ivan, to you for some closing comments, perhaps from the judges' perspective.
Well, it's very exciting to be part of the judging panel this year. I'm excited to see all the entries coming through. As I mentioned earlier, probably this is a great platform to showcase the projects to everyone in Asia. PropertyGuru has been very influential in the Asia property market. So I guess incorporating Australia into the Asian property market, it's certainly beneficial for anyone who is looking at exposure into the Asian market, and to showcase what Australia property projects are like. So yeah, look forward to it.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us this year as well. Thank you. So as we come to a close for this virtual roundtable, I'd just like to acknowledge our partners one more time. So our official supervisor, HLB, the official magazine, PropertyGuru Property Report, our official cable TV partner, History Channel, charity partner, Right to Play, and our ESG partner, Bandek Foundation. And before concluding, I would also like to remind everyone of the entry timeline and the key dates for the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards Australia 2021. So you've still got a couple of months to get your entries in, but time is becoming of the essence. And then we will put our judges to work. They'll be working very hard through the September-October period until we get to our final judges and decision-making process. And then, as I said, the official winners of the Australia portion of the Asia Property Awards will be announced at the same time as our grand final, and those that want to go on to compete for regional honours will also be included in the grand final broadcast on 9th of December. And that, as I mentioned, is also alongside our Asia Real Estate Summit on the December the 8th. So we look forward to seeing everybody there. In the meantime, feel free to send any inquiries to the emails address or just visit our Asia Property Awards website, which gives you all the information about the awards this year and how we're going to be running them throughout the rest of the year. So on behalf of PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards team, thank you for your participation once again today. I hope you have a pleasant afternoon stroke evening, and everybody please stay safe and healthy. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks.